I'm Larry O'Connor, and of course, we continue to cover with keen interest the unraveling of the Biden presidency. That, of course, is the scandal known as the Biden crime family. But make no mistake, this isn't just about Biden's family, his uncle, his son, and other children. It's about the Biden White House, about the Biden administration, the Biden Justice Department, and yes, even the FBI. Most Washington, D.C. scandals have the same components, the same ingredients to bake that scandal cake. You got your crime, then you got your cover up, and then you got your obstruction of justice. And we certainly have it all in this story. But let's focus on that obstruction of justice for a moment, because it involves the stalwart law enforcement agency that all Americans have always revered, and that would be the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. Last week, we learned that the FBI had a document from a confidential human source that had detailed, meticulous information involving what appeared to be $10 million worth of bribe money for then Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. That exchange for favorable treatment from Biden and the Obama administration for a business interest in Ukraine. Now, that's a scandal right there. But then what the FBI did with that information is even more scandalous. It's a systemic problem in our federal government, and it needs to be fixed so the American people can once again have confidence in the law enforcement agency designed to protect our rights and root out criminals with regard to the Justice Department. That's the whole reason the FBI exists. So what went wrong? And why is the FBI now being used as a corrupt political weapon rather than the law enforcement agency it's supposed to be? Well, let's bring in the man who wrote the book on this issue. The book is called The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy, written by Tom Baker. Tom Baker, who was a 33-year veteran of the FBI. He's one of the good guys, and that's why he joins us now. Mr. Baker, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be with you, Larry.
I mean, if it gives me heartache to say that the FBI has become politicized and corrupt, I can't imagine what it's like for you, having served for that agency for so long.
Well, it actually is heartbreaking for myself and for many others like me. But beyond our own personal heartbreaks, there's a great concern for our country and for the Bill of Rights. That's what has to be addressed. That's what we have to get back to.
You know, there would be some cynics that said the FBI was always like this. Under J. Edgar Hoover, it was highly politicized. The difference is he used it as a political weapon against both sides of the political equation. Now it just seems to be a cudgel for one side.
Well, J. Edgar Hoover is a long time in the past, to be quite frank about that. But he set certain standards, and following on him, others set standards. William Webster, Louis Freeh, and agents were always trained about the primacy of the Constitution. I'm afraid with the new quote unquote intelligence driven paradigm that was started under Bob Mueller, that's Bob Mueller of special counsel fame, and then exacerbated by the poor leadership of James Comey, we've gotten away from this mindset of a law enforcement agency and wandered into the dangerous, uncharted waters of domestic intelligence.
Yeah, let's peel this back a little bit here, because most people, when you think of the FBI, you just think, well, these are federal cops. They're investigators. They work for the Justice Department. And like a local police department or sheriff's office in your local county or state, where they would investigate violations of state law, the FBI is just there to be a cop for violations of federal law. So what is this whole intelligence aspect? Why are they acting like spies all of a sudden?
Well, I think it began under Mueller. Bob Mueller was the director of the FBI for only 2 or 3 days before the September 11th attacks happened. And they happened on a Tuesday. The following Saturday, September 15th, he was summoned to the presidential retreat in Camp David in the mountains in Maryland to give a report. He thought to give a report of the FBI's investigation. And in those just 3.5 days that elapsed between the attacks on Tuesday and that Saturday morning, the FBI had done what it does best: investigate. And they had identified all 19 hijackers. They had found out their financings, their associates, their past travel patterns, their connections going back to Al-Qaeda. And when he was done, expecting praise and thanks, George W. Bush simply turned to him and said, "I don't care about that. I just want to know how you're going to prevent the next one." Mueller left that meeting bound and determined to change the culture of the FBI, and that's the word he used, away from law enforcement and towards intelligence. That had some bad consequences, some very
Yeah.
dangerous consequences for all of us.
That's fascinating insight. So, in other words, cops aren't necessarily there to prevent a crime from happening. I mean, we'd love for them to do so, and we'd love for them to get the bad guy before they commit a crime. But usually, cops are there to sort of gather evidence after the crime and then catch the bad guy, hopefully before he can commit the next crime. What you're telling me is, under President Bush and the determination that we had not to get attacked again by our enemies, foreign and domestic, that the FBI was basically charged with preventing those horrible things, not just cleaning up the mess afterwards, not just finding the bad guys, but actually getting in front of the next attack.
Yes, and to do that, and a lot of it's understandable, but to do it, Mueller set about, in the face of a lot of opposition within the organization, to have it run like an intelligence agency, and that intelligence would become the new driving force, the new paradigm. Let me just mention this for you and your viewers. There's a very significant difference between the culture, the mindset in law enforcement and in intelligence. In a law enforcement agency, every day you live for the day when you're going to have to stand up in court and raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to a set of facts before a judge or a jury. That's quite different than an intelligence agency who deal in and work towards, they deal in deceit and deception, first of all, and they work towards an estimate, a best guess. Guesses aren't allowed in the courtroom.
Well, they also, if I may, work within the confines of the Constitution, unlike law enforcement that says these are the walls, this is what we're allowed to do. In intelligence work, oftentimes you see what those walls are and you say, okay, how can we work around them and still achieve our goal?
Well, in fact, the intelligence agencies, our intelligence agencies, which operate abroad, don't work in the bound lines of the Constitution. The federal agencies here, law enforcement agencies, principally the FBI, there are others, they are supposed to work within the bound line, the guidelines of the Constitution. But you see this intelligence mindset of just going out
Yeah.
in numerous instances of recent problems. You see it with through the Twitter files, the suppression of free speech, First
Yep.
Amendment free speech, in the Twitter files, well documented. You see it again in this proposal to monitor, to surveil Catholics who prefer
Right.
have a
And
tendency to
and
worship using Latin.
And
That's a
Mr.
real
Baker, it's,
crime.
it's highly politicized and it seems all in one direction. You know what? Hold that thought. I want to continue with this. It's too important. We're going to continue our conversation with Mr. Baker on what's become of the FBI and, more importantly, how to fix it in just a moment. Keep it right here. You're watching O'Connor Tonight on Salem News Channel. You're watching O'Connor Tonight, and we're continuing our conversation with former FBI Special Agent Tom Baker. His book, The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy. And Mr. Baker, you were just sort of fleshing out a point there with regard to the FBI. Now, so much of its operations post 9/11 oriented toward intelligence gathering versus law enforcement and investigating crimes. And we were talking about the distinction there between how an intelligence agency works or sometimes doesn't work within the confines of the Constitution. Do you think that this is sort of part of the problem with the culture at the FBI now that has gone well beyond just the counterintelligence part, the spying part of the FBI, but it's sort of permeated into the regular gumshoe cop and detective part of FBI?
That's it exactly. They have changed the culture. Began under Mueller, continued under Comey, and now because of this loosey-goosey intelligence culture that allows you to think about and wander off into all sorts of areas, we've had all these problems. The first one that was very clear was the Russian collusion investigation. And of course, the bad actors there, Comey, Strzok, McCabe, they've been shown the door. Then we had the gymnast case. 2 agents were shown the door. Then we had the Governor Whitmer case. At least 2 agents were shown the door. And each time these problems come to the fore, the Bureau and the current director, Ray, says, well, we got rid of the bad apples, in so many words.
Yeah.
But the problem continues. The problem is the underlying culture. John Durham, the special counsel's report, did an excellent job of this, and he said there is a need to continually remind the FBI, he used these words in the report, continually remind the FBI of their need to adhere with fidelity to the Constitution. That's what we need to get back to. John Durham was right. It's not just a few bad apples. Now, most recently, and you started by talking about the Hunter Biden mess, last December, an ASAC, assistant agent in charge in the Washington field office, was allowed to walk out the door for having slow walked, deep sixed, if you will, aspects of the Hunter Biden laptop investigation. And once again, the response from the FBI was, well, that the bad apple is gone. But what needs to be done is they need to look at, and a lot of people there believe this too, they need to look at the underlying culture and change the culture to a focus on the Constitution, just like a law enforcement agency's focus.
Mr. Baker, I hear you, but I've got to I guess anyone watching this, Christopher Wray's watching this, James Comey's watching it, Robert Mueller, Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, all those guys, they're saying, oh, Tom, this is a new FBI because of 9/11. And if we follow your advice, then we'll get attacked again. You may not like the way we operate, but we're keeping America safe. How are they wrong?
Well, they're right and they're wrong. It's understandable why this change happened. Every time in history where there's a crisis, it happened in World War II. We had a crisis, Pearl Harbor was attacked, and all of a sudden a lot of bad rules came out, including the internment of Japanese citizens. That was wrong. We realize it now. In the Civil War, we had a great president in Abraham Lincoln, yet he suspended habeas corpus. He was wrong. And some of these things that have put in effect in the FBI and the attitude, the mindset that has developed since September 11th is wrong. It's all understandable how it happened, but it's wrong, and we have to get back on track. And to get back on track in the FBI, that means making the Constitution primary and all decisions made in the light of the Constitution. If that was done, there'd never be any entertainment of surveilling the speech of parents at school board meetings, of surveilling Catholics because they like to say the Mass in Latin, of canceling American citizens who make postings you don't agree with on Twitter. All of those things go smack up against our, not just the First Amendment, but all the Bill of Rights guarantees.
Yeah, amen. So we've got a lot of opinions now about how to fix the FBI. The good news is every Republican candidate right now running for president acknowledges there's something broken and they want to fix it, except maybe Chris Christie. Not sure about that guy. But they've got a lot of different ideas on how to do it. I've heard some people say, you know what, our country has existed half its existence. We didn't have an FBI. Let's get rid of it completely and just let local marshals and law enforcement agencies working for each individual U.S. attorney in each district work on the law enforcement aspects. We don't need a centralized FBI out of D.C. What do you think of that solution?
Well, that has appealed to a lot of people. I happen not to agree with that. I think it's good that our domestic intelligence service is kept under the umbrella of a law enforcement agency. I said for years, and not just me, I mean, this was what FBI instructors and lecturers and public spokesmen people would say, that we're unique in the United States in that our domestic security service is in fact a law enforcement agency, therefore working within the bounds of the Constitution, within the guidelines of the law. Unfortunately, that's been turned on its head, and I fear, and this is the topic of my book, that now we have a domestic intelligence agency with police powers, and that's something we have to hold in check. But I don't think abolishing the FBI is the answer. Reforming the FBI, which has to be done internally, And also some of the laws that have been abused around it, such as some of the applications of FISA, can be addressed and should be addressed by the Congress.
There are some reformers who would suggest that all you really got to do is clean house from all the political appointees, the seventh floor, as they like to say. Get rid of all of them, hire people over again who would work with a different direction and a different approach, and that would instantly change the culture. Is it that simple?
No, I don't think it's that simple. I think the culture is more widespread. I mean, for one thing, now we have a whole new class of people that need to be trained in the Constitution, intelligence analysts, that they were expanded, their role was expanded after September 11th. It's not just the special agents anymore. But the FBI does do a lot of good things. They do a lot of service functions to support state and local police. We need the FBI, but we need it to stay within the guidelines of the Constitution, and we need leaders like Chris Wray to recognize there is a problem with the culture and to correct that problem. There was a tremendous missed opportunity last week when he testified before Congress. He could have come out forthrightly and recognized the problems. Instead, he again, there's this theme they use, and actually you used it, and a lot of people in the media use it. They talk about all the good men and women, all the good employees of the FBI, 30
Right.
some thousand people now. That's not the issue. That's a distraction. That's like the old saying, the old canard, that when people talked about a certain racial or ethnic group, fill in the blank, whatever one you want, they always then prefaced it with the comment, some of my best friends are.
Right.
And Ray and everybody else saying there are 38,000 hardworking men and women in the FBI. That's not the issue. That's like saying some of my best friends are.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Jim Jordan, congressman from Ohio, he's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is also chairing this this subcommittee on the weaponization of the government. A lot of the focus has been on the FBI. I'm sure you're paying attention to that. Do you think he's going in the right direction? And you just mentioned this has to come from Congress. So sort of reinforce that. Are they on the right path right now for real reform?
Well, he's doing a heck of a job. I testified in one of the openings of that hearing in February. He has a very difficult job. It's an imperfect vehicle because he still has a lot of the Democrats on the committee. They'd rather talk about Trump, Trump, Trump than look at the problems of DOJ and FBI. Not all of them. Some of them see some of the problems. They definitely see the threat to civil liberties with parts of the FISA Act. They definitely see the danger in the monitoring of Americans' free speech on social media. But most of the Democrats are not on board with him, so the hearings are very difficult to get a focus on. Then when they had Chris Wray there a week and a half ago, Chris Wray, just went off in all different directions, and quite frankly, the congressman did as well. I think Jordan stayed on point on the big issues, and that's what needs to be done. But at the end of the day, he's doing the best he can, and he's running that committee very well. And there is work for Congress to do that they can do. At the end of the day, the FBI has to clean house, but the Congress can do something. And one of the things that were abused terribly is FISA, and they definitely can address that.
Oh, amen to that. And they need to. Listen, there's much more to discuss, and hopefully we'll do it on another day. We're out of time now. That's Tom Baker. The book is The Fall of the FBI, How a Once Great Agency Became a Threat to Democracy. He calls out the problems, but then he offers solutions. That's our kind of guest. Keep it here on O'Connor Tonight. We're going to take a break now from talking about the Biden scandals here in Washington, D.C., and focus on the Biden scandals on our southern border. In fact, this is a scandal that affects our national security. It affects the drug trade and the deaths of our children. It affects our economy. It affects, well, hell of a lot. And he has neglected that border, as we know. What's the latest on it? Joining us now is Executive Director for the Center for Immigration Studies, Mark Krikorian. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
As we know, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, he's trying to do whatever he can to protect his state, even if the federal government won't. He's put up these floating barriers in the Rio Grande that have basically made it impossible for people who, we saw the videos of people just easily wading across the river into America. Well, now it's not so easy. They've got these barriers up. First of all, was that a good idea? Are they effective?
Well, I mean, it's as far as it goes, obviously, the border is 1,200 miles long. So they're not going to be solving the problem. But the point of them is to sort of break up the flow, force people to go around them where the Texas DPS can block them there too. So yeah, these buoys, what they do is they kind of spin. So you grab onto it, it just rolls back on you. And they're
Yeah.
used in a lot of maritime security, like harbor security things. So this isn't something Texas made up. This is an established thing. The Biden administration, though, has threatened to sue because it's stopping illegal immigrants from coming over, and that seems to be their goal.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to next. It seemed like a rather inexpensive and elegant solution to this problem. So why on earth would the Biden administration threaten to sue over this? Unless they just don't want the border protected. That's the only conclusion one can reach.
Yeah, ostensibly, it's supposedly a treaty violation, maybe, although I don't see how it is, because we have a treaty with Mexico that governs the border and water issues. Obviously, how much water can you take out and all that kind of stuff. Except this isn't blocking the flow of water. There's no boats using this area. It's not a navigable river. And they're not on the Mexican side. They're in the middle, which is where the border is. So I don't know. Look, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know that there's any case here. The real issue is this is an extension of what we're seeing on the river bank, where the Texas state police are trying to stop people from getting across, and the Border Patrol, at Biden's insistence, are helping people get across. So illegal immigrants in the river, they're being stopped by Texas state police. They're actually calling out for Border Patrol, saying, hey, where are you? Please let us in, save us, because the Texas people won't let us in. We know that you people taking orders from D.C. will let us in.
Mark, that's got to be so humiliating and debilitating to the Border Patrol. They didn't get into border protection to just help people and facilitate people to cross the border. The morale has got to be at rock bottom now with that great organization.
Absolutely. I mean, it's never great, but yes, it's very low. But my concern, though, is that more and more Border Patrol agents are leaving. They're retiring as soon as they can. They're getting jobs. If they're younger, they're getting jobs at police departments because they all have to know Spanish. They're actually probably the most highly trained federal law enforcement officers. So they're in demand elsewhere in, city, Houston Police Department or what have you. And the Biden administration is going to be replacing them with people who haven't known anything else. So the real danger, especially if there's 4 more years of this, is that the very culture of the Border Patrol will be changed, and from a law enforcement agency to basically Walmart greeters or the welcome wagon at the border. And that's a real danger.
You've told us in the past that many laws already exist on the books right now if only a president and an administration were serious about enforcing those laws. We don't need any new laws to protect the border. However, there are certain loopholes, if you want to call them that, with regard to asylum. Now, what can you tell us about what the Biden administration is now trying to implement in terms of a modification to its current asylum policies?
Well, they're supposedly tightening up on asylum. They're using the kind of pale reflection of a rule that the Trump administration put into effect, that judges stopped until the administration ran out of time and then Biden pulled the plug on. That rule would have said, if you haven't applied for asylum in one of the countries that you passed through before you got to our border, you don't get to apply for asylum. Because the whole point is you're fleeing for your life. And, it's like a drowning man doesn't pick and choose among life preservers that are thrown. He grabs the first thing he wants. So if you've made it to the border of Mexico and the United States, and you haven't applied for asylum in one of the 6 or 7 or 10 or 12 countries you passed through, you're obviously not a real asylum seeker. So Biden finally, after 2.5 years, said, boy, this is getting out of control. We need to have something like that. But one of our people is very experienced at this and read the rule. It's a long regulation, a lot of legalese. She said, basically, the whole thing is full of loopholes themselves that swallow the whole rule. In other words, it doesn't even do what this administration wants it to do. What we need is, among other things, a firm rule that if you haven't applied for asylum in Mexico or one of the other countries you came through, you don't even get to apply for asylum. You may be, you may deserve it, but you don't get to apply because you're just using asylum as a way of gaming the system and getting into our country to get a job.
Right. It's not about asylum. It's about becoming American, or at least coming to America and getting a job to send money back to your family. So in other words, let's say you're in Honduras or Guatemala or Nicaragua. You could easily seek asylum in Costa Rica, but instead you're crossing various countries' borders, or Panama, or you're going to Belize, you're going to Mexico, then you're going to America. Well, I mean, if you want asylum, just get it in your neighboring country and you've got your asylum. Here's the thing, though. When I saw the Trump administration attempt to put policies like this in place, or the Remain in Mexico policy that they did put in place, I was told an administration can't just arbitrarily do that. I was told it required full immigration reform coming out of Congress. What am I missing here?
Yeah, you're not missing anything. Basically, the Democrats were trying to were opposing anything President Trump did to try to control the border. And interestingly, the same people have sued to try to stop this Biden order, this sort of weak, pale version of an asylum rule that the Biden people have put into place. And there's supposed to be a ruling on that, at least an initial ruling at some point soon. So it could well be that the anti-borders activists will prevent Biden even from doing this lame, pale version of an asylum rule. And if that happens, then what are the Biden people going to do? I don't know. I mean, at some point, they're going to have to conclude, look, we actually need to enforce the border here.
But that's the monster that they created, isn't it? That's the monster that their party has created for the sole purpose of attacking President Trump or attacking those who do want border protection. They've created this monster who will accept nothing but open borders.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. And interestingly, this goes back a ways, but some of your listeners may remember the Mariel boat lift during the Jimmy Carter administration. He created that problem. He said, anybody who gets here, we will welcome them with open arms and open hearts. 120,000 people showed up almost overnight. But because Carter hadn't run as the open borders candidate, he was able to make a 180 and shut that down. Biden doesn't have that flexibility. And he's appointed all kinds of people who are, frankly, pretty radical in their anti-borders ideologies. So it's going to be hard. This administration is going to have a hard time, even if they wanted to control the border. And we might end up with 4 more years of this. And I'm not sure what the border is going to look like after that.
If it will be there at all. Mark Krikorian, thanks for joining us. We are, by the way, we continue to hear from the Democrats that they still want this comprehensive immigration reform. Is there any chance in this Congress that anything like that could even happen?
No, of course not. I mean, first of all, the Republicans control the House. And look, there's a lot of bad Republicans on this issue, but there's not enough of them. There's not enough of them to help the Democrats pass something that ridiculous.
Good to know. Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, always good to have you, and thanks for checking in on the border. It's like it's been off the front pages for a little while, but it's still a major problem. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
There's more to come on O'Connor tonight. Keep it right here. You're watching Salem News Channel. We've made no secret here on O'Connor tonight that we're pretty big fans of the series The Chosen. And of late, we've been talking quite a bit about the little movie that could out of Hollywood, Sound of Freedom. Now, what do these two entertainment endeavors have in common? The studio that presented them, that would be Angel Studios. And joining us right now is the co-founder and president, Jordan Harmon. My goodness, Mr. Harmon, congratulations on quite a little run here.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Well, let's start with The Chosen, if I could, just for a moment, because Jesus Christ is depicted on the cover of TV Guide in a positive way, by the way. That's a big deal. Of course, The Chosen is now being presented on the CW television network. That's quite an achievement considering the origins of The Chosen, isn't it?
It is. It's really exciting because, you have, this now branching into so many different networks that maybe wouldn't otherwise watch the TV series. And so we're excited, when we licensed it to Amazon Prime and then to Netflix and all these different places, each one is going to build out a new network that's going to be really, really meaningful. And so we're so grateful for the impact The Chosen's had as our flagship series and as our original content. We're very excited about it.
Well, I think one of the things that makes it so good is that, first of all, it's great storytelling. Obviously, you've got pretty good source material to work with, but you've been able to be true to the source material in the New Testament and the Gospels, and then flesh out these characters in such a way that harmonize with what we know to be gospel truth, but also sort of enhances. It doesn't have to be necessarily 100% true, the backstories of all these apostles, but it does work, it fits, and it meshes in with what we know to be scripture. That's an incredibly creative endeavor.
Yeah, it's Dallas and his team. When we started on this journey together, we knew he was going to do a good job, but they've done an exceptional job. Like there is no doubt that they have navigated this world so beautifully, and so it's very, very it's fun for me, being with Angel Studios. Every time I see The Chosen, I get more excited about what Dallas is doing and how
Right.
he's portraying this person that I've loved and worshipped for so many, my entire life. And so we could not be more grateful about his ability to both thread in the doctrine of the scriptures and the Bible, but also really thread in like the potential backstories and the motives and why people would have made the decisions they made.
Well, and make it relevant to our sensibilities, our vernacular, what we see around the world every day, without doing cheap stuff, condescending sort of, we're going to put a modern twist on it. I love that. Here's the thing about The Chosen, though: Catholics love it, Protestants love it, Mormons love it, people who have never really been exposed to the Gospels love it. Are you worried that as you continue to tell this story, the way that it is presented in some way at some point might get on the wrong side of sometimes strong disagreements amongst those denominations?
You know, I think one of the most beautiful parts about The Chosen that I think no one anticipated was the unifying effect it was going to have. And so I think more than almost anything throughout history, The Chosen has been this unifier among so many different religions and perspectives. And so we found that to be so beautiful and so exciting, and we think it'll continue to do so for a very, very, very long time.
Well, and that's certainly what Jesus told us in the Gospels. He wanted us to be unified. Wouldn't it be amazing if your work through Angel Studios and Dallas Jenkins' work would actually contribute to that vision? Let's turn now to something else that you couldn't possibly have anticipated. $125 million in box office sales for this movie, Sound of Freedom. In fact, you just finished third to Barbie and Oppenheimer in front of Mission Impossible. Are you pinching yourself sometimes?
Yeah, yeah. We had lofty expectations for this film. We actually, I think we weren't as surprised opening day and throughout the opening week as maybe some people were, but the life that this has taken on and the word of mouth that it's taken on, that has been remarkable. Like I did not have on my bingo card that we would ever beat Mission Impossible for even one day or even 1 hour, and let alone a whole weekend, considering they came out a week after us and it's a massive $290 million production budget film. And so for us, we definitely, there's a little bit of pinching ourselves, but at the same time, the thing that's most exciting about that number of 10 plus million people having gone out and watched this film about Sound of Freedom is that it represents the dialogue and the conversation that's happening around this subject matter and the awareness that's happening that will hopefully shed a light into some of the darkest places of the world, and it's going to allow people to start creating solutions and to be a part of the solution so that we can end this horrible atrocity forever.
Yeah. In fact, I know you're in Washington, D.C. right now because there is a movement to actually take action, to not just let this be a movie that informs, but then actually inspires our lawmakers to do something about it. In fact, we don't even need lawmakers to do anything about it. We have agencies in D.C. already who are supposed to be doing something about it. What are you hoping that next step is for this?
I think awareness is really one of the most important next steps because as we've talked to nonprofits and different organizations that try to combat this, a lot of them say we've got laws coming out of our ears. Like it's not the laws that are so much the issue; it's the awareness and driving that awareness in a meaningful way, so that all of us, any individual who goes and watches this film, at the end of the film can sit down and say, "What can I do personally? What are my skill sets? what resources do I have? And then we all contribute to that. The people who have an adept knowledge on how to actually solve these problems, whether it's a nonprofit or a different organization, I think people are going to find out for themselves internally, if they really look inwardly, what they can do and how they can be a part of the solution. And so, for us, we're grateful that lawmakers and Congress is across the aisle is going to be screening this film. That's very, very exciting. But at the same time, we know that a huge part of this, the solution is going to come from the people. The people are going to be the ones throughout the world who are going to be giving us solutions and actually driving this home.
Mr. Harmon, I come from the world of entertainment. I used to work on Broadway in the theater business. I have a lot of friends in film and television. Since I've been in the business of broadcasting and talk radio and conservative commentary, I've been trying to tell people there are people in Hollywood who want to tell better stories, who want to tell different stories, who want to tell stories that really speak to such a wide audience that don't feel like they're getting the stories that they want out of Hollywood. Now that Angel Studios is seeing this palpable success, are you hearing from those artists? Are you hearing from those writers and directors? Yeah, they must be pitching you all the time.
Yeah, there's quite a few pretty significant phone calls that have happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I won't go into the details of those yet, but the beauty of what's happening is Angel Studios. Our mission is to tell stories that amplify light, and we do this and define this as whatever is lovely, true, honest, noble, excellent. Those principles are the core principles of all the stories we're going to tell. But what we've done is we basically created what's called the Angel Guild. And that's comprised of all the investors in The Chosen and in Sound of Freedom now and in Teletwins and in any one of our TV shows and films. These investors become the gatekeepers of what gets to be considered an angel project. And so we don't believe the problem of Hollywood is the ability to tell stories. I think the greatest storytellers to ever live on this earth. The problem we have right now is the gatekeepers that are getting to decide what stories get made and what stories get out. And so we think that this Angel Guild, the community of over 100,000 people and growing, that niche community that helps create every one of these TV shows and films, they're the ones who are going to be the gatekeepers, and they're the ones who are going to decide what stories get to craft culture and move our society forward.
Well, I love to see a good success story come out of Hollywood, not just with great content, but then actually getting the financial rewards that go along with that, because then that money is applied to the next great project. So you're doing something right there, Mr. Harmon at Angel Studios. Thank you for joining us. Get your information if you want more on it at angel.com. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight. Joe Biden and the Democrats have making a lot of hay over the last couple of years saying that Republicans are going to rip your Social Security away from you, but that's nothing new. Remember when Paul Ryan was throwing Granny off a cliff? Anytime anyone discusses any changes, modifications, or reforms to entitlements, somebody always screams that they're taking away your benefits. Even Donald Trump is using that as a weapon against Ron DeSantis and some of the ideas he's floated. DeSantis isn't alone. Nikki Haley and Mike Pence have also put forward proposals that would make some resolution for Social Security's problem that it's about to face. So how do we solve it and still do it within the confines of American politics? That's the challenge. Joining us now is Rachel Gressler. She's a senior research fellow for the Center for the Federal Budget at Heritage Foundation. And Rachel, let's start with the premise. Does Social Security need fundamental reform? Does somebody have to do something?
Social Security is broken. It has been broken for decades, and every year that we wait, it gets exacerbated. And it is reckless to say that we can continue not doing anything and that we're simply going to protect Social Security benefits, because the reality of the current situation is today, Congress does nothing. Everybody's benefits get cut within a decade by 23% across the board. It doesn't matter if you are 68 or you are 98. On average, those benefit cuts will be $5,000 per year, and they will increase over time.
So that's automatic. That's built into the law right now. So in other words, when President Biden says the Republicans are going to cut your benefits, what he's not saying is if the Republicans and Democrats don't do anything, your benefits are also going to get cut. Either way, your benefits are getting cut.
Anybody who says that they are not going to reform Social Security is saying they are voting for a 23% across the board benefit cut.
All right. And by the way, that also applies to President Trump. President Trump is using this as a weapon against Ron DeSantis in a pretty aggressive way, right? Every time that he has a chance, he says, don't forget, DeSantis is going to cut your Social Security. But that's going to happen anyway, whether we do something or not.
It absolutely is. And it could happen to the next person who is elected president. Right now, the Social Security actuaries say 2033, but that's moved up in recent years. It could be within the next president's 8-year term if they have 8 years.
So, I mean, listen, I'm old enough to remember when George W. Bush was running for president, and he just proposed allowing us to put some of our Social Security savings into kind of a 401k plan rather than the current plan that Social Security is based on. Is that still an option? Would that be one of the ways to do this? What do you think is the best of the proposals out there?
So there are two factors to reform. One is to address the insolvency of the system. It has built up $22.4 trillion in unfunded obligations. That is $172,000 for every household in America that this program has promised, but it doesn't have the money to pay. So you do have to address the solvency of the system, and in ways that don't penalize people who are already retired or close to retirement. But the way that you get out from underneath this program that's really a terrible deal for average Americans, and especially for younger Americans, is to have an option to get out of the system. It would be something like the personal accounts that Bush had proposed, but I would make it optional as opposed to forcing everybody into that. And there really are common sense reforms here that can be done. And I want to applaud any lawmaker or potential nominee that is willing to talk about them, because not talking about it is just saying you want benefits to be cut.
It seems, though, whenever somebody actually comes forward with some proposal to fix this problem, the temptation for the person's political opponent is just too great to pass up. It's so easy to scare people and use this as a political weapon. No one's ever been harmed by using this as a political weapon. People have only been harmed politically by actually proposing reforms, and then, boy, the lions are unleashed against you.
Yeah, and that's where I think they need to turn it on the other side and say, okay, if you aren't for cutting benefits, are you for what the CBO and the Social Security actuaries say is going to be somewhere between a $2,400 per year tax hike and a $3,500 per year tax hike for the average household? That is just to keep the current system as it is now. It's no increase in benefits. You add that up over the years, and that's taking away Americans' ability to save on their own throughout their lifetimes.
Rachel Greisler has been writing about this over at Heritage Foundation and over at the Daily Signal. She's done all the research, and the numbers are there. The only question is whether we have politicians with the fortitude to be able to actually understand the numbers and do something about it. And, well, Rachel, your work at Heritage will certainly go a long way to getting us to that point. Thank you so much for joining us and explaining much of it to us.
Thank you.
Did I just say we're waiting for politicians to have courage and fortitude? Oh, my gosh, I'm sorry. What am I thinking? We're going to be waiting quite a long time. That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I'll see you on the radio.